Welcome to another episode of Business by the Numbers. I'm your host, Hunt Demarest, CPA with Parmelis & Associates. So this week we have a very special guest, Chris Jones, the Group Editorial Director at Endeavor Business Media, and who's my main contact at Ratchet+Wrench. We tried to connect when we went to the Ratchet+Wrench conference, but technology did not work in our favor. But luckily we were able to connect when we all returned home, and it was a great conversation. What he sees in the future, what people are talking about, and what he wishes people will talk about more is exactly what we're going to get into this week. Shop owners, are you struggling to find and retain top-tier talent for your automotive shop? Introducing Promotive, on the web at gopromotive.com. With over 40 years of combined industry and recruiting experience, we're the ultimate staffing solution. We go beyond traditional agencies. Our team provides dedicated recruiters and account managers advising on processes, compensation, and benefits. We focus on placing technicians and service advisors with shops that offer the best culture, training, and long-term growth opportunities. Trust our experience to match the right talent to your shop. We carefully select shops that value employee excellence and provide an environment for success. Our dedicated team leads the entire process, leveraging our industry knowledge and expertise. Partner with Promotive and experience their advantage to help you build a high-performing team that drives your shop's growth. Visit gopromotive.com today and let us help find and keep the best talent in the industry. Before we get into that, I just want to stop and say thank you to you and the rest of the dedicated listeners. Remember, if you want to be a guest on here, have a question for me, or want to hear something talked about, shoot me an email at podcast@parmelis.com. Want to talk to me about accounting and tax services that we can offer your repair shop? Shoot us a text at 301-307-5413. So really excited today. I have an awesome guest. We have Chris Jones here, and Chris is the Group Editorial Director for the Vehicle Repair Group at Endeavor Business Media. And how I know Chris is he is the editor for Ratchet+Wrench. So Chris, I just wanted to say thank you for coming on here, and you can correct me if I gave you too much or too little titles there.
I think you gave me an appropriate amount of titles there, Hunt.
Perfect. So I guess going back, so I was kind of looking up before Endeavor Business Media. I didn't realize that they do so many different publications and so many different industries on it. So are you in more than just Ratchet+Wrench, or are you just more focused on Ratchet+Wrench right now?
So what I do is I oversee all the editorial operations. So we do have an editor at Ratchet+Wrench now, Christine Shaffrin. So I was kind of the interim editor while we were putting her in place and installing her. So my predominant vertical is aftermarket business world. So on the distribution and parts side, we oversee, we've got tool and equipment, we've got mechanical repair, collision repair, quick lube. We've got tire dealers. We got the whole gamut of auto repair.
So if you're looking at all these different industries that you oversee, and obviously most of my audience is going to be focused on the auto repair side, what do you see talked about a lot in other industries that you're surprised isn't really as hot of a topic yet in auto repair?
Ooh, that's a really good question, because I feel like we've made some leaps and some strides over the last 2 years with catching up, particularly getting auto to mimic more retail. In the sense where shops they're having either more hours or they're working weekends for some of them now, or we've got things like the use of AI, a lot more AI tools being used. So the online scheduling, kind of the phone prompt based scheduling. So I feel like we've caught up. We're starting to catch up to the retail side of things a lot better than when I first got here.
Now, what do you say when you see people come out to Ratchet+Wrench, and then you kind of see people across the industry, or just kind of in your day-to-day on it, what do you think the difference is by some of the shop owners that you see that are going to some of these conferences that you're going to versus maybe just a random shop owner off of the street?
The mindset, 100% the mindset. I think that shop owners who attend conferences like Ratchet+Wrench have a couple of things in common. One, they are more entrepreneurial, so they're thinking long-term business and growth strategies. They're looking at really, in a sense, creating their own economy for their team. So they're looking at the long-term implications of how do we build something sustainable so that everybody in this team has good health benefits, they've got good pay, they're doing work that they're proud of. So I think those are the biggest things that I see that are different. And then two, I think the amount they care about training. I think a lot of the shop owners who come there they train themselves, one, so therefore that trickles down. There, when it goes to other shows that have more technician-based training, you see them there with their technicians, their advisors. So just that desire to continue to grow as a company, not just the owner, but the entire team growing together.
Yeah, that makes sense completely. It's like, hey, everyone that has owned a shop at some point, like, hey, you've had that decision made for you, right? It's the ones that really care about this and really have that long-term perspective in mind of, all right, I can make this as good or as bad as I want, and how do I reinvest in myself to learn that? So love it. You obviously read a lot of articles. You have went to a lot of classes in Ratchet+Wrench at the conference and just kind of seen it around at different shows. What was the most enlightening training? You're not allowed to say my class, but what was kind of the session or the article, whatever that you sat in on where you were like, hey, that really surprised me of either I wasn't expecting this or, it maybe shifted your mindset?
I think it was Phil Carpenter. His class was really about, what shop owners need to do to prepare to go MSO, to add other shops. And it wasn't what you would have expected. Typically, you'll in those sessions, you'll hear about a lot of success stories and numbers and various dynamics, etc. Phil took it back to basics, and he took it all the way back to process. And it kind of goes back to, if you've ever read like James Clear, he talks about, when you fail to your processes. And so Phil took it all the way back to process, man. Here's the documents you need. Here's the systems that we use. Here's like the way that you track your paperwork. Here's the way that you create SOPs. He went all the way back to the very basics. And I thought that foundational level was something I wasn't expecting from his class at all, or any class on MSO and, shop growth.
And I think it's a point a lot of people miss when they're going multi-location, right? Is they're trying to go and they're trying to recreate success, but a lot of people can't quantify what success is because they never documented their procedures. They're like, it's working here, but how can you replicate that if you can't really even understand what it is that you are doing? So very cool. So do you think that getting training and stuff like that is harder in today's day and age because there's so much information out there? Or do you think that that is actually a benefit for shop owners or any business owners to be able to go and get, more information that they would ever want at their fingertips?
I think it's a lot easier now. I think it's simply because, like you said, you can go as granular as you want. I mean, when you go through when you look through some of the curriculums that the tech trainers are offering at various conferences, you can see like it dials in very deep. So I think that gives a technician who doesn't want the broad strokes an opportunity to learn something more specialized while they're there. Or of course, you have the opposite end where you have some of the classes that are, just the very 101 level or the very 102, the very basic level classes for the newer technicians. So I think that the breadth of offering definitely helps technicians in a show environment. But I think also you've got the virtual learning. You get stuff that comes in all the time from your suppliers. You got now you've got apps that can teach you. So I think that any way that a person can learn, they have an opportunity to learn in a style that fits their the way they take in information.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what do you think is, like, when you're talking to shop owners or you're like listening to these classes, what do you think that their biggest kind of complaint or short-term concern seems to be?
Regarding the classes?
No. Just regarding like the industry, their specific shops in general. If they're like, Chris, like, hey, this is the thing that most shop owners are really struggling with. What do you think that is?
Efficiency. I think a lot of them are still struggling with efficiency, which it always harkens back to like you hear shops talk about car count, et cetera. I think just finding more efficient practices. How can we do it better, more efficiently, get things through, get the customer in and out faster, on both sides. Whether it's the front of the house or back of the house, what's the best way to do it, and having the people qualified on both sides who can do that in a way that's fast and effective for the customer.
Yeah, and I think the tricky part is you hit the nail on the head there of like it's finding good people and making sure you have the right people in the right seats. And if you don't, none of this is ever going to work. But I would say that from what I've been hearing from my shops, that's probably the number one hardest thing for them is just finding qualified help or finding people that want to be in this industry. You kind of serving in the role that you do and kind of overseeing, other industry and other trades on this. Do you see similar things where it's just really hard to find good help? Is it unique to AutoRepair? Or is there anything that, any industry that's been able to buck this?
I mean, I think a lot of people, you go out and you see help wanted signs like all over the place, right? I think everyone's looking for help. But I think when it comes to automotive, because, being a technician is a little more specialized, I think it's a little bit harder. And I think, just to get, when you talk about, getting students, interested or getting young people interested in the industry, that comes with a challenge too, because I think, there's still this stigma that the industry is what it was 40 years ago, 35 years ago. I don't think people see this as an industry that's really becoming heavily tech-based, that's more STEM-oriented now as we get as we get cars that are more electrified, more intricate, more computerized. I think it creates a great opportunity, but yeah, it's going to be more, and I think it's more of the shop owners, taking the opportunity as well, to partner with organizations that go into the schools to educate parents and educate people that, hey, this is not your grandfather's industry anymore. This is brand new.
Yeah, the tricky part about this is it's unfortunate industry where you can't work from home. You're probably not going to be working at a desk, and I think there's a lot of talk about this of like, hey, it's hard to find qualified help, and it's like, man, it's hard to find help in a lot of aspects, right? Like even my business, right? And we have an accounting and tax firm, and it's indoors. You can work on a computer. You're never going to get dirty if you don't want to. And it's just hard to find people at all. So I'm still trying to figure that out.
It is. I was reading a headline yesterday where I think it was Ford. They were saying that they had 5,000 open tech jobs, and they're looking to throw like six figures at people to come fill these positions, and they can't even find people at that rate of pay. So it just tells you kind of like what the economic climate's like, and just really what people's attitude towards work is.
Well, like they were talking about trying to bring some of these jobs back to America, and I forget what comedian he says. He goes, Americans don't want the Nike jobs. We just want the Nikes, right? Like, hey, don't try to make us work for it. As far as 2025, do you think that overall for shops it was something where you were hearing positive things? Do you think that it was struggle for most people? And then second to that question is, what is kind of the outlook for 2026 around the industry?
Wow. I'll harken back to some comments that, Mike Bennett had shared with me. He said, I think the beginning of the year was looking very bleak. Shop owners were really concerned from, I think, Q1 to about midway through Q2 to the end of Q2. And then just something clicked. And I think he said that, the rest of the year has been very strong. And he foresees it kind of continuing to be strong. And, I don't have any hard data on that. But I think, if that's kind of what he's expressed and what he's seeing, being someone who trains shop owners and who's also running a shop himself, I have definitely every confidence that he's right about it.
Yeah, and I think that I've been seeing a lot of that in my own shops, right? I think we had a really big changing of the times, right? There was a time, this time last year, where you still couldn't buy a lot of the new cars. That's obviously kind of stopped. The chip shortages have kind of sorted its way out. And really, I think especially on the dealer side of it, the dealers are in really precarious spots this year, whereas last year they probably were still doing all right. Now, for the most part, the aftermarket, if the dealers are doing well, they might not be doing as well. But luckily, if the dealers aren't doing well, hey, these people have to get their cars fixed somewhere. So absolutely, I completely see that. Every month, auto repair shops can lose over $20,000 in uncredited parts, cores, and lost profits. WickedFile's AI-powered software is a game changer. It helped one shop owner recover over $10,000 in missed credits, and others have recovered tens of thousands more. WickedFile puts cash back into your business and hours back into your day. Stop leaving money on the table. Visit wickedfile.com to learn more and get started today. Where is the Ratchet+Wrench conference next year? Is it going to be back in Arizona again, or to be determined, or what?
Yeah, it's to be determined. I can't disclose any information on that just yet, but right. You'll be the first to know.
All right, perfect. What class did you not have taught this year that you hope someone will present on next year? Whether it's a specific topic, whether it's a specific person, your choice on this one.
Ooh, that's a really good one. I think, that's a really good question. I think if we could have had any topic that was missing, I wanted one that I really wanted this year was the mental health one. I really am very, very kind of adamant about continuing that. We had a series with Margaret Light, and she's been actually getting more involved in the industry, but did a series with her throughout the year on Ratchet+Wrench Radio, and I really wanted her to come to Phoenix. It didn't work out as we'd wanted, but I would have really loved to have her come and talk about that, because I think, work burnout is real. All across the board. We're all working hard. We're all giving our best. We're all trying to solve, our own problems, the problems of our team, et cetera, along with solving customer problems. And I think, shop owners need to definitely make sure that they're taking care of themselves holistically across the board.
That's a really cool idea. And I also think it kind of goes back to what you're talking about, this industry of it's changing, right? Like this is not the industry that I first started in. This is not the industry that a lot of people's parents started. I think of the idea of mental health in most of the shops that I know 25 years ago, of just how even of bringing something like that up would have probably just not even been allowed, let alone they, try and do something on it. Are you seeing a lot more shops deal with, kind of mental health issues on their employee level? Or is this more for like an owner of just kind of, making sure that they are getting what they need as well?
Well, I think you can go multiple ways with that, because I think you can talk about just a general mental health, like an overwork, burnout, sort of just the rigors of the job sort of thing for an owner. Because there's a lot of stress in that. There's a lot that goes into running an auto repair shop. But then you also have the mental health of, the team members. I think, when you look at and consider that, there are a lot of neurodivergent people who work in auto repair, a lot of technicians, et cetera, who may have, Asperger's or ADHD, et cetera. I think, being a shop owner who is astute to understanding how, those employees work and how to help them be the best they can be, I think that's important as well. Because I think sometimes we can throw labels at people when we don't think that their work ethic aligns or matches what we think they should be doing without knowing the full story. So I think it's important for shop harmony as well, just to be educated on just the mental health of just even your team members.
Yeah, and I guess, also mental understanding, right, of like trying to put yourselves in their shoes and figuring out what they're trying to do. And I will agree with you. This is 100% the way that the top shops are making their team productive, is they understand their strengths, they understand their weaknesses, and they're creating an environment for these people to succeed. Because one thing that I know that I've heard a lot of shops talk about is, hey, you can't just throw money at people anymore. Right. This used to be a fairly easy, hey, you want people, have a really high flat rate, pay a lot of money out, make sure you have a lot of cars, and you got guys lining up down the road. But what do you say to the shop owner that's kind of trying to tiptoe on profit or mental health? Because I feel like in a lot of situations, you're kind of ignoring one to get the other. Hey, if you want to make a lot of money on it, you're probably going to be forcing your team to more or less burn themselves out and crank out a ton of hours. But then in the long run, is that really profitable if you can't have, these people stay with you long term?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where I think those one-to-ones matter, getting with your team, just taking the temperature. If you're a shop owner, you're constantly taking the temperature of your team, finding out how people are doing, what's going on in their lives. You hear those stories all the time about, the shop owners who do that, and how successful they've become by just making sure that the people on their staff are taken care of and they feel taken care of. When people feel like they're cared about in a job situation, when they feel cared about in an environment, they show up for you.
Well, and also there's a lot of profit in that too, right? Hey, you want to hear about how to make your team more productive, how to make your shop more efficient? Just listen. Your guys will probably tell you. It's not the guy out the back smoking a cigarette or on the Snap-on truck, right? It's probably, hey, I don't have enough training, or hey, you keep on dispatching this work to a kid that just doesn't really get it yet. But it's a complicated industry. You guys, you obviously kind of hear from the consumer side of it. You hear from the shop side of it. So if you are putting your customer hat on here, what do you think that the biggest thing that customers are asking from shops lately, or, trends that you think is going to be more prevalent in the future?
I think it's always going to be speed of service. I think more than anything else, speed of service. I think people's lives continue to be busier and busier. They're more in motion, and nobody wants to do without their car. Not very long. So if either speed of service or just options, more options for them. Whether you're providing loaners, whether you got the Uber service going on, just providing good communication loops to let people know that, okay, well, if I can't get your car back at X, Y, and Z time, I'm going to take care of you in this way or another. I'm going to either provide you a loaner, or I'm going to shuttle you home, and then we'll keep you up to date with, text messages, et cetera, letting you know where we are in the process. So I think when it comes to my shop, I think that's where they excel. I'm constantly getting texts about where they are in the process, so I know an approximation about when I should expect my car back. And that takes a lot of the anxiety off, because especially you go into a situation where you dropped your car off on a Thursday, you're thinking about the weekend, like, am I getting this thing back before Friday? And to know that, that the shop is thinking about that too, I think that helps a lot.
That's like my number one complaint. I always tell my shop owners, like, guys, like, I do 99% of my own work on my cars and stuff like that, but like, I am your customers, and there's nothing worse than my wife texting me at like 4 being like, hey, do I need to pick you up from the shop? And I'm like, I don't even know if they've started it, right? Like, I don't want to be rude by calling and asking. And then 5 minutes later, they're like, oh yeah, we're done. Come pick it up. It's like you said, of that communication back and forth goes a long way and ultimately probably saves time, right? Like, hey, if you're communicating back and forth, the car's in there, we're working on it. I don't need to call and bug your front counter person, right? I know what's going on. I know when it's going to be ready. That's pretty cool. Now, kind of coupling on that same thing, you said, hey, customers really want speed of service. What I have always kind of heard in the past is, hey, these customers want trust. They want that relationship. They want to kind of be explained. Do you think that people have kind of lost interest and they're like, you know what, I'm not going to understand this. If you can text this, if you can give me the videos, and if you can get it done tomorrow, I'm going to probably take that over the guy that's willing to spend 2 hours explaining what a tie rod is.
Yeah, I definitely side with A. Like, because my thing is, because it's all trust. If I've brought my car to you, then I trust that you know what you're gonna, that you know what to diagnose, what you found, and you can show me, like I said, through the DVI. Mm-hmm. Here's what the problem is. Here's how we fix it. I mean, I've seen that, through the DVIs that I've looked at on my own car. Like, get the DVI back. I see the green, yellow, red, and I'm like, okay, well, I know I can just skate on the green. The yellow, I'll ask about that. But the red, I want to know about, like, how important it is to get this done and what's the cost going to be. So I think it's just people don't want to have their time wasted, but they want to know, okay, I trust you. What's it going to cost? It's
kind of, I see that when I do my tax returns, right? It's like, hey, I want to understand enough that I know that you've done professional care on this, but also at some point you have to just give up blind trust of like, hey, this is very complicated. And I'll argue most of the cars that you guys are out there driving are 10 times more complicated than the tax returns I'm doing, right? And I think that's a lot of this, right? Is like, there's been a time probably before I was born where these cars got more complicated than the average person. But nowadays, yeah, I think that I can totally see that, where there's so many computer modules, there's so many things that no one's even ever heard of. Why am I going to spend all this time trying to explain it to you? You don't even care. You just want to know, you know what it is. You know that you're going to be able to fix it. Here's the timeline. Here's how much it's going to cost. Well, this has been really good. I'm going to put you on the spot for one last comment here. But either best piece of advice that you've ever heard, best piece of advice that you would ever share with a shop owner. Yeah, your pick on that one.
I don't know. It always goes back to just personal responsibility, just taking personal responsibility. If something, like I said, when I'm dealing with teams, or if you're dealing with teams, man, if, things fall apart, just take the onus on it, just, okay, well, I'll figure out what went wrong, and I'll take the hit for it and just figure out where we need to correct course and get the team back on track. But it's always a situation where it's like, when you do know, you praise in public and you critique in private.
Yeah, the joy of being self-employed, good or bad, it's your fault, right?
Right on.
Perfect. Well, Chris, I just want to thank you again. Thank you for having us out at the conference. Thank you for joining me on this episode. And yeah, just appreciate you being here and helping us out.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you for everything you do as well.
So I hope you appreciated that conversation with Chris. I know I learned a lot from it. As always, please share with friends. If you have any question, comments, or ideas for future episode, shoot me an email at podcast@parmelis.com. So just want to say thanks again for listening on the Automotive Repair Podcast Network. Remember, you can find all shows wherever podcasts are found, and also in the Automotive Repair Podcast Network app. So thanks again for joining me on Business by the Numbers. Stay safe out there, and I will talk to you all next week.